Lisa Rodriguez had always been the type of person who planned everything down to the last detail. Her small apartment had color-coded calendars on the refrigerator, and she kept backup plans for her backup plans. But on this particular Tuesday morning in March, all her careful planning was falling apart like a house of cards. Her phone buzzed at 6:30 in the morning, just as she was getting ready for another day at Miller & Associates Insurance Company. The name on the screen made her stomach drop. It was Mrs. Henderson, her usual babysitter. "Lisa, honey, I'm so sorry," came the raspy voice through the phone. "I woke up with this terrible flu and I can barely get out of bed. I can't watch little Joey today." Lisa felt her chest tighten. She had been working as a customer service representative at the insurance company for 3 years now, and she had built a reputation for being reliable. Never late, never absent without good reason, always professional. It was a job she desperately needed to keep. 7-year-old Joey was still fast asleep in his small bedroom, his dark hair messy against the pillow, completely unaware that his mom's world was spinning into chaos. Lisa quietly closed his door and paced around their tiny living room, her mind racing through options. She called the backup daycare center she sometimes used for emergencies. The phone rang and rang before an automated message told her they were closed for the week due to unexpected plumbing repairs. Her heart sank further. Lisa didn't have family in the city. Her parents lived 3 states away, and her sister was dealing with her own young children. The few mom friends she had made at Joey's school were either working themselves or unavailable. She even considered calling in sick, but she had used her last personal day when Joey had gotten a stomach bug the month before. By 7:15, she was sitting at her kitchen table with her head in her hands, feeling completely defeated. Joey wandered out of his bedroom, rubbing his sleepy eyes and asking for breakfast in his sweet, innocent voice. "Mommy, are you okay?" he asked, noticing the worried expression on her face. Lisa forced a smile and got up to make his favorite pancakes, her mind still spinning with impossible solutions. As she flipped the pancakes, she found herself staring out the kitchen window at the gray morning sky, feeling more alone than ever. The insurance office where she worked wasn't like the big corporate buildings downtown. Miller & Associates was a smaller company with about 30 employees, housed in a converted brick building that used to be a school. Lisa had always liked the family-like atmosphere, even though the pay wasn't amazing. Her co-workers were friendly enough, and her supervisor, Mrs. Chen, had always been understanding about the challenges of single parenthood. As Joey ate his breakfast, chattering about a project he was working on in 2nd grade, Lisa made a decision that scared her to her core. She would have to bring him to work with her, just for today, just until she could figure something else out. "Joey, sweetie," she said, sitting down next to him at their small table, "how would you like to come to Mommy's office today?" His eyes lit up with excitement. "Really? Can I see where you work?" "Yes, but you have to promise me something very important," Lisa said, her voice serious but gentle. "You have to be very, very quiet, like a mouse. Can you do that for Mommy?" Joey nodded eagerly, not understanding the weight of what his mother was asking or the risk she was taking. Lisa packed his backpack with coloring books, his favorite stuffed dinosaur, some snacks, and his tablet with headphones. She also threw in a small blanket, hoping she could set him up somewhere comfortable and out of sight. The drive to work felt like the longest 20 minutes of her life. Joey sat in his car seat, excited about this unexpected adventure, while Lisa's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She had never violated company policy before. She had never even been late to work. Now she was about to bring her child into the office, something she was pretty sure wasn't allowed. When they arrived at the building, Lisa parked in her usual spot and took a deep breath. "Remember, Joey, quiet as a mouse, okay?" The office building had a small lobby with elevators that led to different businesses on each floor. Miller & Associates occupied the entire 2nd floor, with an open workspace filled with cubicles and a few private offices along the windows. There was a break room in the back corner, away from most of the action, and Lisa figured that would be the safest place to set Joey up. Her plan was simple. Get to her desk early before most people arrived, settle Joey in the break room with his activities, and check on him regularly throughout the day. The break room had a small table and chairs, and it was usually empty except during lunch hour. She could keep him fed and entertained, and hopefully nobody would notice. Lisa badged into the building at her usual time, 8 o'clock sharp. The hallways were quiet, with only a few early arrivals making their way to their offices. She held Joey's hand as they walked through the main workspace past rows of empty cubicles toward the break room. "Wow, Mommy, this is where you work every day?" Joey whispered, his eyes wide as he looked around at the computers and office chairs. "Yes, baby, but remember, quiet like we talked about." The break room was empty and perfect for her plan. Lisa quickly set up Joey at the small round table in the corner, spreading out his coloring books and setting up his tablet with the volume turned down low. She gave him his morning snack and explained that she would be working at her desk just outside, and he could wave at her through the glass door if he needed anything. For the first hour, everything went perfectly. Joey colored quietly, occasionally looking up to smile at his mom through the window. Lisa answered phone calls from insurance clients, processed claims, and tried to focus on her work while keeping one eye on her son. Her coworkers began arriving around 8:30, and a few of them noticed Joey through the break room window. Most just smiled and gave Lisa a questioning look, which she answered with a quick explanation about childcare falling through. Everyone seemed understanding, even sympathetic. By mid-morning, Lisa was starting to relax. Maybe this would actually work. Maybe she could get through just one day, and by tomorrow she would have figured out a better solution. Joey was being an absolute angel, quietly entertaining himself and not causing any trouble. But as the morning wore on, more and more people began to notice the small boy in the break room. Some stopped by to say hello, which made Joey excited and a little less quiet than Lisa had hoped. A few coworkers brought him extra snacks or asked about his coloring projects. Lisa began to feel nervous again. The attention was exactly what she had hoped to avoid. She wanted Joey to be invisible, but that was proving impossible in the small, close-knit office environment. Still, everyone seemed friendly and understanding, and nobody had complained. What Lisa didn't know was that Mr. Patterson, the office manager, was known for his strict interpretation of company policies. And what she definitely didn't know was that he would be making his rounds through the office that afternoon, checking on things as he always did. For now, though, mother and son were managing their impossible situation with hope, love, and the kind of quiet determination that keeps families together when everything else falls apart. The morning had been going so well that Lisa almost allowed herself to believe everything would work out fine. Joey had been an absolute angel, quietly coloring at the break room table and occasionally waving at her through the glass door. Her co-workers had been understanding, even kind, stopping by to chat with Joey and compliment his artwork. By lunchtime, Lisa was feeling cautiously optimistic. Joey had eaten the sandwich she packed for him and was now working on a puzzle, his little tongue sticking out in concentration the way it always did when he was focused. Lisa checked on him during her lunch break, sitting with him for a few precious minutes and listening to him tell her about the dinosaur he was drawing. "Mommy, I like your office," he whispered, still remembering her instructions to be quiet. "Everyone here is really nice." Lisa smiled and kissed the top of his head. "They are nice, aren't they? But remember, we still need to be super quiet, okay?" What Lisa didn't know was that Mr. Richardson, the office manager, had spent the morning in back-to-back meetings with the company's regional directors. Richardson was the kind of manager who believed that rules existed for a reason and that exceptions led to chaos. He was methodical, precise, and had never met a policy he didn't think should be followed to the letter. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Richardson finally had time to make his usual rounds through the office. This was something he did every day, checking in with different departments, observing workflow, and making sure everything was running according to company standards. He took pride in maintaining what he called professional order. He started at the far end of the office, moving systematically through the cubicles, stopping to chat with employees about their current projects. Lisa noticed him making his rounds but didn't think much of it. Richardson had always been polite to her in their limited interactions, though she knew he had a reputation for being strict about office policies. As Richardson worked his way through the office, several of Lisa's co-workers began to feel nervous. They had all seen Joey throughout the day and understood Lisa's situation, but they also knew Richardson's personality. A few people tried to subtly warn Lisa by catching her eye and nodding toward the break room, but she was on a call with a difficult client and couldn't step away. Richardson continued his rounds, clipboard in hand, making notes about various office matters. He was discussing quarterly reports with the accounting department when he happened to glance toward the break room. Through the glass door, he saw a small figure hunched over the table, clearly not an employee. His steps slowed and he excused himself from his conversation. With a confused expression, he walked directly toward the break room, his dress shoes clicking against the tile floor in a steady rhythm that seemed to echo through the suddenly quiet office. Lisa was still on her phone call when she saw Richardson approaching the break room. Her blood turned to ice. She tried to wrap up her conversation quickly, but the client was asking detailed questions about their policy coverage that she couldn't just brush off. Richardson opened the break room door and stepped inside. Joey looked up from his puzzle, his dark eyes wide with surprise at seeing this tall man in a suit looking down at him. "Hello there," Richardson said, his voice not unkind but clearly confused. "What's your name?" "I'm Joey," the boy answered honestly, just as his mother had taught him to do when adults asked him questions. "And what are you doing here, Joey?" "I'm waiting for my mommy to finish work," Joey replied, pointing through the glass door toward Lisa, who was desperately trying to end her phone call. Richardson's expression hardened as he realized what was happening. He looked around the break room, taking in the coloring books, the small backpack, the tablet, and the evidence that this child had been here for quite some time. His jaw tightened as he processed this clear violation of company policy. Lisa finally managed to end her phone call and rushed toward the break room, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She could see through the glass that Richardson was talking to Joey, and she knew this was exactly the situation she had been desperately trying to avoid. "Mr. Richardson," she said breathlessly as she entered the break room, "I can explain everything." Richardson turned to face her, his expression stern and disapproving. By now, several other employees had noticed the commotion and were watching from their desks, though they pretended to be focused on their work. "Ms. Rodriguez," Richardson said in a voice that carried clearly through the quiet office, "would you care to explain why there is an unauthorized person in our workplace?" Lisa felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment as she realized that their conversation was essentially public, with half the office able to hear every word through the thin walls and glass doors. "Sir, my babysitter called in sick this morning and my backup daycare is closed for repairs. I had no other choice but to bring Joey with me today. It's just temporary, just for today, and he's been very quiet and well behaved." "That's not the point, Ms. Rodriguez," Richardson replied, his voice getting louder. "We have strict policies about unauthorized visitors in the workplace. This is a professional environment, not a daycare center." Joey shrank back in his chair, clearly sensing that something bad was happening even though he didn't understand what. His bottom lip started to tremble as he watched the tall man speak sternly to his mother. Lisa knelt down next to Joey's chair, putting a protective arm around him while trying to address Richardson. "I understand your concern, sir, but this is truly an emergency situation. I've worked here for 3 years, and I've never violated any policies before. I'm a single mother, and sometimes these situations happen despite our best planning. Your personal circumstances don't change company policy," Richardson said coldly. "What you've done today shows poor judgment and a lack of professionalism. What if we had important clients visiting? What if there was an emergency evacuation? This child could be a liability." The word liability hit Lisa like a slap. She looked down at Joey, who was now quietly crying, though he was trying hard not to make any noise. "Furthermore," Richardson continued, clearly warming up to his lecture, "your decision to bring personal problems into the workplace reflects poorly on your commitment to your job. How can we trust that you're giving your full attention to our clients when you're distracted by childcare issues?" Lisa felt tears stinging her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not in front of everyone. Mr. Richardson, I've maintained excellent performance reviews for 3 years. I've never missed a deadline, never had a client complaint. One emergency doesn't erase 3 years of dedicated service." "Demonstrates that you don't respect company policies," he replied sharply. "And if you can't manage your personal life without it interfering with your professional responsibilities, perhaps you need to reconsider whether this position is right for you." The entire office had gone silent now. Everyone was pretending to work, but Lisa could feel their eyes on her. Some looked sympathetic, others just uncomfortable. A few of her closer colleagues looked angry on her behalf, but they all knew better than to intervene when Richardson was in full lecture mode. Joey tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Mommy," he whispered, "why is the man being mean to you?" Richardson heard this and his expression became even more severe. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is not an appropriate environment for a child." Lisa stood up slowly, her legs shaky with anger and humiliation. "You're absolutely right, Mr. Richardson. This is not an appropriate environment for a child. No child should have to watch their parent be humiliated for doing whatever it takes to keep their family together." Richardson pulled out a disciplinary action form from his clipboard. "I'm issuing you a formal written warning. Any repeat of this behavior will result in immediate termination. I want this incident documented in your personnel file." As he handed her the paper, Lisa's hands were trembling. She looked around at her co-workers, most of whom quickly looked away, unwilling to get involved. The few who met her eyes offered sympathetic smiles, but nobody spoke up. "Come on, Joey," Lisa said quietly, helping him pack up his things. "We're going home now." As they walked through the office toward the exit, Joey held tightly to his mother's hand and whispered, "I'm sorry I got you in trouble, Mommy." Lisa squeezed his little hand and managed a weak smile. "You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart. Nothing at all." But as they left the building that day, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to get much worse. 2 weeks had passed since the incident in the break room, and Lisa had been walking on eggshells ever since. The written warning sat in her personnel file like a ticking time bomb, and she knew that Mr. Richardson was watching her every move. She had managed to arrange more reliable childcare with a neighbor's teenage daughter, and everything seemed to be getting back to normal. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. On a Thursday morning in early April, Lisa woke up to find Joey burning up with fever. His forehead was hot to the touch and he was complaining that his throat hurt. She took his temperature, 101.2 degrees. Not dangerously high, but definitely too sick for school or daycare. Lisa's heart sank as she realized what this meant. She had already used up her sick days and personal time earlier in the year, when Joey had caught the flu. Taking an unpaid day off was something she simply couldn't afford. Her rent was due in a week, and she was already stretching her paycheck to cover groceries and Joey's school supplies. She called Mrs. Peterson, her backup babysitter, but got her voicemail. She tried the teenage daughter next door, but the girl was in school, and her parents weren't comfortable having her skip classes. Lisa even called the emergency daycare line, but they wouldn't accept a child with a fever. By 7:30 in the morning, Lisa was sitting on her couch next to Joey, who was wrapped in a blanket and looking miserable. She had called into work and left a message saying she would be a few hours late due to a family emergency, hoping desperately that she could find someone to watch Joey by noon. "Mommy, my throat really hurts," Joey croaked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know, baby. You just need to rest today and drink lots of water," Lisa said, stroking his hair. But inside she was panicking. She couldn't afford to miss work, but she also couldn't leave her sick child alone. By 10 o'clock, with no other options presenting themselves, Lisa made another decision that terrified her. She would bring Joey to work again, but this time she would be even more careful. She would set him up somewhere more hidden, maybe in one of the unused storage rooms. He was sick and sleepy, so he would probably just rest anyway. "Joey, sweetheart, do you think you could come to Mommy's office again today? You could sleep on a cozy blanket while Mommy works." Joey nodded weakly. "Will the angry man be there again?" Lisa's heart broke a little. "Hopefully not, baby. And if he is, we'll be extra quiet, okay?" She packed a bag with medicine, extra blankets, tissues, and Joey's favorite stuffed animal. The drive to work felt even worse than the first time. Her hands were shaking as she gripped the steering wheel, knowing full well that she was risking her job, the only source of income she had. The plan was to get to the office before most people arrived and find a quiet corner where Joey could rest without being noticed. She had remembered that there was a small storage room near the back of the office that was rarely used. It had a window and was clean enough for Joey to rest in. Lisa badged into the building at 8:15, hoping that Richardson wouldn't be making his rounds early today. She helped Joey, who was moving slowly due to his fever, through the main workspace toward the storage room she had in mind. But as they passed through the cubicles, several of her co-workers noticed them. The expressions on their faces ranged from sympathy to worry. Everyone remembered what had happened 2 weeks ago, and they knew that Lisa was taking a huge risk. "Lisa," whispered Janet from accounting, catching her arm gently. "Honey, are you sure about this? Richardson has been watching you like a hawk since the last time." "I don't have any choice," Lisa whispered back. "Joey's sick and I can't afford to miss work." Janet looked around nervously. "He's been in early every day this week checking on things. Maybe you should just take the day off." "I can't afford it," Lisa repeated, her voice cracking slightly. Lisa managed to get Joey settled in the storage room with blankets and pillows she had brought from home. The room was small but comfortable enough, and Joey curled up immediately, exhausted from his fever. She gave him some children's medicine and promised to check on him every hour. "Try to sleep, baby. Mommy will be right outside if you need anything." For the first hour, Lisa thought maybe she could pull it off again. Joey was sleeping peacefully, and the storage room was away from the main traffic areas of the office. She answered emails and phone calls, trying to focus on work while her heart pounded with anxiety. But Richardson had indeed been coming in early all week, and today was no exception. He had developed a pattern of checking different areas of the office each morning, and today, his route included the storage areas where old files and office supplies were kept. Lisa was on a call with a client when she saw Richardson walking purposefully toward the back of the office, his clipboard in hand as always. Her blood turned to ice as she realized he was heading straight for the storage room where Joey was sleeping. She tried to end her call quickly, but the client was asking detailed questions about their policy renewal. Through the glass partition, she watched helplessly as Richardson approached the storage room door. Richardson opened the door expecting to check on some old filing cabinets, and instead found a small boy sleeping on blankets on the floor. His face immediately darkened with anger. Joey woke up when the light from the hallway hit his face. He looked confused and scared, still groggy from his fever and the medicine. "What are you doing here?" Richardson demanded, his voice sharp enough to carry through the office. Joey started to cry, partly from being startled awake and partly because he was still feeling sick. "I want my mommy," he sobbed. Lisa abandoned her phone call mid-sentence and rushed toward the storage room, but it was too late. Richardson had already discovered Joey, and this time his anger was white-hot. "Ms. Rodriguez," Richardson's voice boomed across the office as she approached. "My office now, and bring your things." Lisa's co-workers stopped what they were doing and watched as she knelt down to comfort Joey, who was crying harder now. She picked him up gently, feeling how warm he still was from the fever. "It's okay, baby. Everything's going to be okay," she whispered, though she knew it wasn't true. Richardson was already walking toward his office, his face set in stone. Lisa followed with Joey in her arms, knowing that her worst fears were about to come true. Richardson's office was small and sterile, with company policy manuals lining one wall and productivity charts on another. He gestured for Lisa to sit in the chair across from his desk, then closed the door behind them. "I cannot believe," he began, his voice tight with controlled fury, "that you would have the audacity to bring this child into our workplace again after I specifically warned you about the consequences." "Mr. Richardson." "Please," Lisa started, but he held up his hand. "No, I don't want to hear any excuses. 2 weeks ago I gave you a formal written warning. I made it crystal clear that any repeat of this behavior would result in immediate termination. Did I not make myself clear?" Joey was still sniffling in Lisa's lap, and she could feel his little body shaking. Whether from fever or fear, she wasn't sure. "You did, sir, but my son is sick today and I had no other childcare options. I couldn't afford to take an unpaid day off, and your personal problems are not the company's responsibility," Richardson interrupted coldly. "Your inability to manage your personal life without disrupting the workplace shows a fundamental lack of professionalism and reliability." Lisa felt anger rising in her chest alongside the fear. "My inability to manage my personal life? Mr. Richardson, I'm a single mother doing everything I can to provide for my child while being the best employee I can be. Sometimes life throws situations at you that aren't in any handbook. And sometimes employees make choices that show they're not fit for their positions," Richardson replied, pulling out a termination form from his desk drawer. You've demonstrated that you cannot follow company policies even when given a clear warning. This puts the company at risk from a liability standpoint. Liability? Lisa repeated, her voice rising. This is a 6-7-year-old boy, not a dangerous criminal. Company policy exists for a reason. Ms. Rodriguez, I'm terminating your employment effective immediately. The words hit Lisa like a physical blow. She had known it was coming, but hearing it out loud made it real in a way that took her breath away. Joey looked up at his mother with wide, scared eyes. Mommy, what does that mean? Lisa struggled to keep her voice steady. It means we have to go home now, sweetheart. Richardson was filling out paperwork as he spoke. I'll need you to collect your personal items and return your badge and any company property. Security will escort you from the building. Security? Lisa couldn't believe what she was hearing. You're treating me like I committed a crime for taking care of my sick child. I'm following company protocol for terminated employees. Richardson replied without looking up from his forms. 20 minutes later, Lisa found herself in the parking lot, holding Joey with one arm and a small box of her personal belongings with the other. Her co-workers had watched in uncomfortable silence as a security guard walked them through the office and out of the building. As they sat in her car, Joey asked the question she was dreading. Mommy, how will we buy food now? Lisa started the engine with trembling hands, not having an answer to give him. For the first time in 3 years, she had no idea how. 3 months had passed since that terrible day when Lisa walked out of Miller & Associates with Joey in her arms and a cardboard box of her belongings. 3 months of the longest days she had ever experienced, filled with rejection letters, dwindling bank accounts, and sleepless nights spent worrying about their future. The first month had been the hardest. Lisa had filed for unemployment benefits, but the payments were barely enough to cover rent, let alone groceries, utilities, and Joey's school supplies. She had applied to dozens of jobs, from customer service, positions like her old one, to retail work that paid half as much. Most applications disappeared into online systems without even an acknowledgement. Joey had noticed the changes right away. Their trips to the grocery store became shorter, with Lisa carefully counting every item in their cart. The fun weekend, outings they used to enjoy, trips to the zoo, movies, or even just ice cream, became distant memories. Instead, they spent Saturdays at the public library, where Joey could play educational games on the computers while Lisa searched job boards and submitted applications. Mommy, why don't we buy the good cereal anymore? Joey had asked one morning, looking at the generic brand box on their kitchen counter. Lisa had forced a smile while her heart broke a little more. We're just trying some new things, sweetie. Sometimes change can be good. But Joey was smart for his age, and he had started asking fewer questions about money, which somehow made Lisa feel even worse. No 7-year-old should have to worry about whether their family could afford groceries. The second month brought more challenges. Lisa's car started making a strange rattling noise that she couldn't afford to fix. She began taking the bus to job interviews, which meant longer commutes and arriving tired and stressed. Some days she would apply to 20 jobs only to hear back from 2 or 3 with polite rejection emails. The worst part was the interviews themselves. Lisa had to explain the gap in her employment, and when she mentioned being terminated for bringing her child to work, she could see the judgment in some interviewers' eyes. A few were sympathetic, but sympathy didn't translate into job offers. We're looking for someone who can demonstrate consistent reliability, one hiring manager had told her, the words cutting deeper than probably intended. Lisa had wanted to explain that taking care of a sick child was exactly the kind of reliability that mattered, but she just nodded and thanked them for their time. By the 3rd month, Lisa was getting desperate. Her savings account was empty and she was falling behind on rent. Her landlord, Mrs. Garcia, was understanding but had her own bills to pay. Lisa had even swallowed her pride and called her parents, who lived across the country and were struggling financially themselves. They sent what they could, $100 here and there, but it wasn't nearly enough. Lisa had started looking at jobs she was overqualified for, anything that would bring in income. She applied to work at fast food restaurants, department stores, and cleaning services. The pay would be much less than her insurance job, but she was running out of options. One particularly low day, Lisa found herself crying in the bathroom of the public library while Joey was at a children's story time. She had just received another rejection email, and the reality of their situation was crushing down on her. She wondered if she had made the right choice those months ago. Maybe she should have just left Joey home alone when he was sick. Maybe she should have found a way to make it work without breaking company policy. But then she heard Joey's laugh from the story room. Bright and innocent despite everything they were going through, and she knew she would make the same choice again. Protecting her child would always come first, no matter what it cost her. It was during this dark period that Lisa saw a job posting that caught her attention. Richardson Financial Services was looking for a senior customer service specialist. The job description mentioned work-life balance and family-friendly environment, words that gave Lisa a small spark of hope. The company seemed different from her previous workplace. Their website showed smiling employees and talked about values like supporting our team members as whole people, not just workers. It might have been corporate marketing language, but Lisa desperately wanted to believe it was real. She spent hours crafting her application, highlighting her 3 years of excellent performance reviews and customer service awards. She was honest about her employment gap, explaining that she had left her previous position due to differing philosophies about work-life balance. To her amazement, she received a call for an interview within 2 days. The woman on the phone, Ms. Chen, sounded warm and professional. "We were impressed by your experience and your customer service background," Ms. Chen said. "Would you be available to come in this Thursday morning?" Lisa's heart leaped. "Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity." The interview was different from all the others. Ms. Chen was the interim manager while they searched for a new department head, and she seemed genuinely interested in Lisa as a person, not just as a resume. When Lisa mentioned being a single mother, Ms. Chen nodded understandingly. "We know that our employees have lives outside of work," Ms. Chen said. "We try to be flexible when life happens, because it happens to all of us." Lisa almost wanted to cry with relief. Here was someone who understood that employees were human beings with real responsibilities and challenges. "I see you've been out of work for a few months," Ms. Chen continued. "Can you tell me about that?" Lisa had practiced this answer many times, but she decided to be honest. "I was terminated from my previous position because I brought my sick child to work on 2 occasions when my childcare arrangements fell through. I understand it was against company policy, but as a single mother, I sometimes face impossible situations where every choice feels wrong." Ms. Chen leaned forward slightly. "That must have been incredibly difficult for you. How did you handle that situation?" "I learned that I need to be more proactive about backup plans," Lisa said carefully. "But I also learned that I need to work for a company that understands that good employees sometimes face personal emergencies that don't fit neatly into policy handbooks." Ms. Chen smiled. "I think you'd fit in well here. We believe that supporting our employees as people ultimately makes them better at their jobs." When Ms. Chen offered her the position at the end of the interview, Lisa had to excuse herself to the bathroom to compose herself. She had been unemployed for nearly 3 months, and the relief was overwhelming. The job came with a slight pay increase from her old position and better benefits. More importantly, it came with what felt like a second chance to prove that she could be both a devoted mother and a valuable employee. Lisa started at Richardson Financial Services on a Monday morning in July, nervous but hopeful. The office was modern and bright, with an open layout that somehow felt more welcoming than intimidating. Her cubicle had a small photo frame on the desk, a sign that personal touches were not only allowed but expected. Her coworkers were friendly from day one. During lunch, several of them shared stories about their own families, and Lisa was amazed to discover that flexible arrangements for family emergencies weren't just company policy. They were part of the culture. "Janet brings her daughter to work sometimes during school breaks," one colleague mentioned casually. "And Mike leaves early every Tuesday for his son's baseball games. We just make it work." For the first few weeks, Lisa threw herself into the job with renewed energy. She handled customer calls with enthusiasm, stayed late to learn new systems, and volunteered for additional training. She wanted to prove that the faith Ms. Chen had shown in her was justified. Joey noticed the change in his mother immediately. The stress lines around her eyes began to fade, and she started humming while making breakfast again, something she hadn't done in months. "Mommy, are you happy at your new job?" he asked one evening as they walked home from the bus stop. I think I am, sweetheart, Lisa replied, surprising herself with how true that felt. I think we're going to be okay. But life, as Lisa had learned, has a way of testing you just when you start to feel secure. And the biggest test of all was still waiting just around the corner. Lisa had been working at Richardson Financial Services for 6 weeks, and for the first time in months she felt like her life was getting back on track. Joey was doing well in school. They had caught up on their bills, and Lisa was even starting to think about saving money again. The company culture was everything Ms. Chen had promised: supportive, understanding, and genuinely focused on treating employees like human beings. But on a rainy Tuesday morning in late August, Lisa's carefully rebuilt world came crashing down again. It started at 5:30 in the morning when her phone rang. Mrs. Peterson, her reliable babysitter, was calling from the emergency room. Lisa, honey, I'm so sorry to call so early, came the shaky voice through the phone. I fell down my front steps this morning and broke my wrist. They're keeping me here for surgery and I won't be able to watch Joey today. Lisa's heart sank as she looked outside at the pouring rain. Oh my goodness, Mrs. Peterson, are you okay? Don't worry about Joey. Just focus on getting better. But as she hung up the phone, the familiar panic set in. Joey was still sleeping peacefully in his bed, completely unaware that his mother's world was spinning out of control again. Lisa tried every backup option she could think of. The teenage neighbor was sick with strep throat. The emergency daycare she sometimes used was closed due to flooding from the heavy rain. Even Joey's school had called to say they were closing early due to the weather conditions. By 7 o'clock, Lisa was pacing around her kitchen, fighting back tears. She had worked so hard to rebuild their lives, and now she was facing the exact same impossible situation that had cost her her last job. Joey wandered into the kitchen, rubbing his sleepy eyes. Mommy, why are you up so early? Lisa knelt down to his level, trying to keep her voice steady. Mrs. Peterson can't watch you today, sweetheart. She's hurt and has to stay at the hospital. Is she going to be okay? Joey asked, his eyes wide with concern. She's going to be fine, baby. But that means you might have to come to Mommy's work again today. Joey's face fell. The memory of what had happened at her last job was still fresh in both their minds. Will I get you in trouble again? No, sweetheart, Lisa said, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. My new job is different. The people there are much nicer. But as she got ready for work, Lisa's hands were shaking. She had heard good things about the company culture, but bringing your child to work was a big test of just how family-friendly any workplace really was. She packed Joey's backpack with extra care, coloring books, quiet activities, snacks, and his tablet with headphones. Remember, Joey, just like before, we have to be very, very quiet, okay? The drive to work felt like déjà vu in the worst possible way. Joey sat quietly in his car seat, sensing his mother's anxiety. The rain was coming down hard, making the morning even more stressful. Lisa had heard that the company was getting a new CEO this week. Someone who had been brought in to lead the department. Ms. Chen had been managing temporarily. She had been nervous about meeting the new boss under normal circumstances. Bringing Joey to work on what might be the CEO's first day was the last thing she wanted to do. When they arrived at the office, Lisa tried to slip in quietly with Joey. A few of her coworkers noticed and gave her sympathetic looks, but nobody seemed alarmed. The company culture really was different from her last job. Lisa found a small, unused conference room near the back of the office and set Joey up with his activities. The room had glass walls, but it was away from the main traffic areas and Joey would be comfortable there. I'll check on you every little while, okay? She whispered to him. If you need anything, you can wave at me through the window. For the first hour, everything went smoothly. Joey colored quietly, and Lisa was able to focus on her work. Several co-workers stopped by the conference room to say hello to Joey, and everyone seemed understanding about the situation. But around 10 o'clock, Lisa noticed some commotion near the front of the office. People were straightening their desks and looking toward the entrance. She realized that the new CEO must be arriving for his first official day. Lisa tried to stay focused on her computer screen, but she kept glancing toward the conference room where Joey was working on a puzzle. She had survived this situation once at this company. Surely she could manage it again. Then she heard Ms. Chen's voice carrying across the office. Everyone, I'd like you to meet our new CEO, Mr. David Rodriguez. Lisa looked up from her desk and saw Ms. Chen walking through the office with a tall man in his mid-30s. He was wearing a navy blue suit and had kind eyes that reminded her of someone, though she couldn't place who. They were moving systematically through the office, with Ms. Chen introducing the new CEO to different team members. Lisa watched nervously as they got closer to her section of the office and, inevitably, to the conference room where Joey was sitting. Her heart started pounding as she realized they were heading directly toward her desk. She stood up, trying to look professional and hoping desperately that Joey would stay quiet in the conference room. "Lisa, I'd like you to meet our new CEO, David Rodriguez," Ms. Chen said with a warm smile. "Lisa is one of our newest team members, but she's already proven to be an excellent addition to our customer service department." David extended his hand with a genuine smile. "It's wonderful to meet you, Lisa. Ms. Chen has told me great things about your work." "Thank you, sir." "It's an honor to meet you," Lisa replied, shaking his hand and hoping her nervousness didn't show. But just as they were finishing their introduction, Joey appeared in the doorway of the conference room. He had gotten up to throw something away and was now standing there, clearly visible to everyone. Lisa's face went white. This was it. Her worst nightmare was happening again, but this time in front of the new CEO on his very first day. "Excuse me," David said gently, noticing Lisa's obvious distress. "Is everything all right?" Lisa felt like she might faint. I can explain, sir. My babysitter had an emergency this morning, and with the weather and school closings, I had absolutely no other childcare options. I know this isn't ideal, but I didn't want to miss work, and Joey is being very quiet and well-behaved." David looked from Lisa to Joey, who was standing uncertainly in the doorway. Instead of the anger or disappointment Lisa expected to see, there was something else in his expression. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. "What's your name, buddy?" David asked, walking over to Joey and kneeling down to his level. "I'm Joey," the boy replied quietly, clearly nervous about meeting this important-looking man. "Hi, Joey, I'm David. Are you keeping your mom company today?" Joey nodded. "My babysitter got hurt, so I have to stay here. But I'm being really quiet, I promise." David smiled at Joey, then looked back at Lisa. "You know, Joey, 30 years ago, I was about your age, and my mom was a single parent just like yours. She worked as a secretary at a law firm downtown." Lisa stared at him, not understanding where this was going. David continued, still at Joey's eye level. "Sometimes when my mom's babysitter couldn't come, or when I was sick but not too sick to be alone, she had to bring me to her office. I spent a lot of afternoons coloring in conference rooms and break rooms just like you're doing today." Lisa's mouth fell open slightly. This was not the conversation she had expected to have. "My mom's boss back then," David said, standing up and looking at Lisa, "was a man named Mr. Williams. Instead of getting angry or making my mom feel bad, he understood that sometimes life happens. He helped my mom set up a little corner in an unused office where I could do my homework when I needed to be there." David's voice grew warmer as he continued. "Mr. Williams used to say that the most dedicated employees were often the ones juggling the most responsibilities outside of work. He said that my mom worked twice as hard as anyone else because she was working not just for herself, but for me too." Lisa felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "You know what happened to my mom?" David asked. "She became one of their best employees. She worked there for 15 years and eventually became the office manager. And me? Well, I learned about hard work, dedication, and the importance of treating people with compassion by watching how Mr. Williams treated my mom." He looked directly at Lisa. "I was that kid once. I know exactly what it's like to worry that your presence is going to get your parent in trouble. And I know what it means to have a boss who understands that sometimes being a good parent and a good employee means making difficult choices." Ms. Chen was smiling broadly, clearly moved by the story. "So here's what we're going to do," David continued. "First, Joey, would you like to see the office? We have a pretty cool break room with games and books." Joey looked at his mother, who nodded with amazement. "And Lisa," David said, turning back to her, "let's talk about setting up some policies that support working parents. I'm thinking we could partner with a local daycare for emergency situations, and maybe create a family-friendly space where kids can hang out safely when life happens." Lisa was speechless. After months of shame and worry about being judged as an unreliable employee, she was hearing the exact opposite from her new CEO. "I don't know what to say," she managed finally. You don't have to say anything, David replied. Just know that your dedication to both your job and your son doesn't go unnoticed.